She begged him to leave her, but he carried her in his arms for 3 days using an exoskeleton. The sun hung low over the desert planet of Karin 7, casting long, fiery shadows over the cracked, orange landscape. Dust swirled in the dry wind, stinging the eyes of those who dared to travel without protection. Amid this harsh world, a small convoy moved steadily toward the human colony of Nova Vesta, its metallic frames glinting in the dying light. Lieutenant Ethan Cale walked beside the lead vehicle, the hum of his prototype exoskeleton echoing with every step. The metal framework clung to his body like a second skin, its servos whirring softly as it amplified his strength. In his arms, he carried Dr. Myra Solon, whose leg had been crushed under the debris of a collapsed ridge earlier in the day. Her face was pale, streaked with dust and sweat, and her breaths came in shallow, ragged gasps. "Lieutenant," she whispered, her voice trembling, "please leave me. I can't keep up. You'll die if you keep carrying me." Ethan glanced down at her, the dim sunlight catching the determination in his sharp green eyes. "I'm not leaving you, Myra," he said firmly. "Humans survive when we refuse to give up. I will get you home, no matter what." She shook her head weakly, tears brimming. "You don't understand. The raiders, they're faster. The storms, this planet, it's impossible. Just go, save yourself." Ethan adjusted the exoskeleton support mode, shifting her weight closer to his chest. "Impossible isn't a word humans use to describe what we can't do," he replied. "It's a challenge, and we don't give up on each other." A distant rumble made them both freeze. Ethan scanned the horizon and saw dark shapes moving between the jagged rocks. Alien raiders. They had weapons and vehicles far more advanced than most human transport convoys. The raiders had found them. Without hesitation, Ethan activated the exoskeleton's combat mode. Hydraulic muscles tensed, servos hummed, and he felt the extra strength flow into his limbs. Myra's head rested against his shoulder, her eyes wide as she watched the alien silhouettes draw closer. "Lieutenant, this is suicide," she gasped. Ethan ignored her panic, his mind calculating the best path to safety. There was a narrow canyon nearby, its entrance half hidden by rock formations. "We move there," he said calmly. "You stay with me or you won't make it at all." Carrying her through the sand and jagged rocks was far harder than any standard exoskeleton training had prepared him for. Each step risked a misbalance that could send them tumbling down the slope. Myra's weight shifted as she tried to assist, but her leg offered no support. Ethan gritted his teeth, muscles straining, the exoskeleton servos screaming under the load. Hours passed, or perhaps minutes. Time felt strange under the scorching sun and relentless wind. Every movement demanded focus. Every step was a battle. Myra's complaints softened into silence, though she kept her eyes on the horizon, watching for the raiders' approach. Suddenly, a sharp explosion shook the ground. Ethan stumbled but caught himself, his exoskeleton compensating for the force. One of the raiders' drones had fired, tearing into the sand beside them. Myra flinched against him, but he held her steady. "They're close," he muttered. "We have to reach the canyon." The canyon's mouth finally appeared, a shadowy crevice cutting into the mountainside. Ethan increased his pace, powered by both determination and adrenaline. The raiders were not far behind, their drones hovering like vultures, scanning for movement. A warning beep from his exoskeleton indicated rising heat levels. Carrying her this far was pushing the system beyond its limits, but he ignored it. Nothing mattered more than keeping her alive. Inside the canyon, the wind died down, replaced by an eerie stillness. Ethan set Myra down gently on a flat rock, kneeling beside her to check her injuries. Her leg was swollen, bruised, and twisted unnaturally. She winced when he touched it. "You see," she said, voice trembling, "this is why I said leave me." "You're going to live," he said. "And I'm not leaving, do you understand?" Her eyes filled with tears again, but there was a hint of awe beneath them. "You really mean that, don't you?" Ethan nodded. I carry people when others can't. That's what humans do. We don't abandon each other. Myra swallowed hard, trying to hold back sobs. You're incredible. Ethan gave her a faint smile, masking the exhaustion spreading through him. I'm human, and humans do incredible things when they have to. They rested for only a short time before the sound of alien engines returned, closer now, echoing through the canyon walls. Ethan lifted Myra back into his arms. Move fast, he muttered to himself. No stopping, not now. The exoskeleton groaned under the load, but it held. Ethan focused on the path ahead, weaving through rocks, sand dunes, and sharp cliff edges. Myra clung to him, her fear slowly replaced by a quiet admiration for his strength. She could feel every servo in the exoskeleton working to stabilize him, to ensure her safety. She realized then how remarkable humans were, not because of weapons or machines alone, but because of willpower and courage. The canyon narrowed, forcing them to move single file. Ethan's breath came heavy, but he kept pushing. A rockslide forced him to jump sideways, narrowly avoiding a crushing boulder. Myra's gasp of fear spurred him onward. Hours later, night fell. The desert planet's twin moons rose, casting silver light across the rocky landscape. Ethan found a small overhang where they could rest. He set Myra down gently, scanning the darkness for any sign of the raiders. None appeared. For a moment, Myra allowed herself to breathe. Lieutenant, you're like a force of nature, she said softly. Ethan chuckled, shaking his head. Just human, he replied. Humans push past limits when life depends on it. The night was cold and the wind howled outside, but inside the canyon they found a small measure of safety. Myra leaned against him, feeling the exoskeleton's warmth and strength. I still don't understand, she murmured. Why do you care so much? Because humans survive, Ethan said simply. We fight, we endure, and we protect one another. That's what makes us strong. Myra closed her eyes, realizing that he meant it. She had begged him to leave, but now she understood the truth. Human determination was not something easily broken. She had never seen it so clearly as she did in the man carrying her, walking for hours through a deadly desert, refusing to give up. Outside, the wind continued to rage, but inside that small canyon, the human spirit burned brighter than any storm. Ethan adjusted the exoskeleton, preparing for another long day. The journey was far from over. The desert still stretched endlessly before them, and the raiders were still out there. But for now, Myra felt a flicker of hope, a belief that perhaps humans truly could overcome even the impossible. And beside her, the embodiment of that belief carried her forward, step by grueling step. The night was long, and the journey ahead even longer. But Ethan Cale, with his exoskeleton and unyielding resolve, was ready to face it all. For humans never abandoned one another. Humans never quit. And humans survived. The morning sun rose slowly over the jagged horizon of Karan 7, painting the desert in shades of red and gold. The wind had calmed during the night, but the air was still thick with the smell of dust and metal. Ethan adjusted the exoskeleton straps across his shoulders, making sure every servo was working properly. Myra stirred in his arms, wincing as she shifted. "How are you feeling?" Ethan asked, his voice calm but firm. I'm sore," Myra admitted, "and tired. I don't think I can." "You can," Ethan interrupted gently. "Humans can push through more than they think. That's what makes us strong, you'll see." Myra looked at him, doubt and admiration mixing in her eyes. She wanted to protest, to remind him how impossible this was, but something about his confidence, the way he carried her without complaint, made her hesitate. Maybe humans really could endure more than she had believed. Ethan started walking, carefully navigating the uneven desert terrain. Every step required concentration. The exoskeleton compensated for Myra's weight, but even so, his muscles burned with effort. Dust swirled around them as he moved, and the distant outline of alien drones flickered like shadows on the horizon. "You don't stop," Myra whispered, almost to herself. "Even when it's impossible." Ethan glanced at her, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Impossible is just another challenge," he said, "and humans never back down from challenges." The canyon walls around them offered some protection from the open desert, but the narrow path made movement difficult. Ethan had to balance carefully to avoid slipping on loose rocks or stumbling into crevices. The exoskeleton's hydraulic systems groaned under the strain, but it held firm. Hours passed, and the heat of the day began to rise. Myra leaned against Ethan, closing her eyes for a moment. "Do you ever get tired?" she asked quietly. "Sure," he admitted. "But tired doesn't mean stopping. It means finding a way to keep going." She thought about her life back on the colony. She had always believed humans were fragile, easily broken by harsh conditions. But here was Ethan, carrying her through a desert where most would have died, refusing to give up. Slowly, a sense of awe replaced her fear. Their progress was interrupted by a sudden shriek from above. Myra's eyes shot open as a small alien drone swooped down, its weapons scanning the ground. Ethan reacted instantly, raising his arm and activating the exoskeleton's defensive shields. The drone's energy blast struck the shields, sparks flying, but they held. Myra gasped. "There's so many of them." "Not enough to stop humans," Ethan replied firmly. "We adapt. We survive." He moved swiftly, weaving through the canyon's twists and turns while the drone pursued. Myra clung to him, her heart pounding in rhythm with his movements. The exoskeleton's servos whirred, adjusting to every step, keeping them stable. Ethan leapt over a small crevice, landing with a controlled thud that sent dust spiraling around them. The drone hesitated, momentarily confused by their speed and agility. Ethan didn't waste the chance. "Keep holding on," he said. "We're not done yet." By mid-afternoon, they found a small underground shelter, a natural cavity in the canyon wall. It was dark, damp, and narrow, but it offered a brief respite. Ethan set Myra down carefully, inspecting her leg. The swelling had worsened, but thankfully it hadn't broken further. He used some spare bandages and the medkit they had carried to stabilize her injury. "You're amazing," Myra said softly, watching him work. "I don't know anyone who could do this." "I'm human," Ethan replied simply. "That's all it takes. Humans endure, humans survive, and humans help each other when it matters most." Myra nodded, a small smile breaking through her pain. I think I understand now. Humans really are incredible." They rested in the shelter for a short while, sharing silence broken only by the distant hum of alien drones and the soft mechanical whir of the exoskeleton. Myra found herself staring at the metallic joints and servos, realizing that human ingenuity had made this possible. Without it, they would have been trapped, or worse. After a brief rest, Ethan prepared to continue. "We can't stay here," he said. "The raiders will keep looking. We move now." He lifted Myra once more, adjusting the exoskeleton to its endurance mode, designed for long-distance travel. Every step became a careful calculation, balancing speed with safety. The sun hung high in the sky, beating down relentlessly, but Ethan's determination never wavered. Myra could feel his strength beneath her, the steady rhythm of his movements carrying them forward. The desert was merciless. Sharp rocks cut through the sand, hidden crevices threatened to swallow them whole, and the occasional dust storm reduced visibility to almost nothing. Yet Ethan pressed on, never slowing, never faltering. Myra, despite her fear and exhaustion, began to understand something she had never truly believed. Human willpower could overcome almost anything. As the day wore on, they came across a dry riverbed, a trench of jagged stones and hardened mud. Ethan carefully stepped into it, feeling the exoskeleton adjust to the uneven surface. Myra gripped him tightly, her fear giving way to trust. She began to see that survival wasn't just about technology. It was about courage, intelligence, and determination. Suddenly, another drone appeared, larger and more menacing than the last. It hovered above them, scanning, its energy cannon aimed directly at Ethan. Without hesitation, Ethan activated the exoskeleton's integrated weapons system. He fired a pulse that temporarily disabled the drone's sensors, forcing it to retreat. Myra watched in awe, her respect for him growing with every move. You really can do anything," she said, still clinging to him. "Not anything," he replied. "But we humans are good at adapting, good at surviving, good at pushing forward when all seems lost." Night fell again, colder and sharper than the day. The desert transformed into a field of shadows and silver light under the twin moons. Ethan found another small shelter, this one more open but still offering protection from the wind. He set Myra down, and this time she looked at him differently, not just as a protector but as a symbol of human determination. "Ethan," she said quietly, "why do you keep going? Why not just let them, whatever?" He looked at her, his eyes steady and unwavering. "Because giving up isn't human. We don't leave others behind. We don't quit. No matter the odds, humans endure, humans survive, and humans fight for each other." Myra nodded, understanding in a way that went beyond words. She had begged him to leave, pleaded for him to save himself, but now she realized that humans weren't meant to abandon each other. Their strength came from unity, courage, and relentless determination. As they settled for the night, the desert wind howled outside, but inside their small shelter, a spark of hope burned. Myra leaned against Ethan, trusting him completely for the first time. And Ethan, though exhausted and pushed to his limits, felt that familiar fire of human resolve. The journey was far from over, but step by step, they would face whatever came. Because humans never gave up. Humans never quit. And on Charon 7, against alien threats and deadly terrain, that was enough to keep them moving forward. The third day on Charon 7 began under a pale orange sky. Ethan adjusted the exoskeleton settings for endurance mode once more. His muscles ached, sweat dripped down his face, and yet he carried Myra Solon without complaint. Each movement demanded total focus. The rocky terrain beneath their feet was sharp and uneven, threatening to topple them at every step. Myra, though still exhausted and in pain, felt a strange sense of calm. Watching Ethan move, she realized that his determination was more than personal strength. It was human strength in its purest form. Humans did not surrender when faced with danger. Humans adapted, endured, and pushed forward even when everything seemed impossible. "Ethan," Myra whispered, her voice hoarse, how are you still moving?" Ethan gave her a faint smile, though his face was lined with fatigue. "Humans are built to survive," he said. "And sometimes we discover just how far we can go when we have to." Their path led them through a narrow gorge, the canyon walls looming high on both sides. The sand shifted beneath their feet, and loose rocks made each step dangerous. Every movement required precision, and every misstep could be fatal. Yet Ethan continued, adjusting the exoskeleton to compensate for Myra's shifting weight. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, heat radiating off the rocks and making the air shimmer. Ethan's exoskeleton began to overheat. A warning beep sounded from the control panel mounted on his forearm. He knew he needed to stop to cool the system, but stopping meant they could be spotted by the alien raiders searching the desert. He found a small, shaded alcove carved into the canyon wall. Setting Myra down gently, he began quick repairs on the exoskeleton. The heat from the sun made the metal hot to touch, and every movement tested his endurance. Myra watched him work, astonished. You really know what you're doing," she said quietly. "I've never seen anything like this." Ethan didn't look up. "Humans solve problems. We don't just give up when machines fail or when things get hard. We fix, we adapt, we survive." With a few careful adjustments, the exoskeleton systems cooled and returned to normal operation. Ethan lifted Myra once again, and they continued. As the sun began to descend, a sudden sandstorm erupted. The wind howled like a living thing, whipping dust and sand into their faces. Visibility dropped to almost zero. Myra tried to shield her eyes, but the sand stung, and the wind threatened to knock them both off balance. "Stay close," Ethan shouted over the roar of the storm. "Hold on tight. We move together or we don't move at all." Myra clung to him, her fear replaced by awe. Even in the storm, Ethan's determination never wavered. His steps were careful but steady. The exoskeleton systems adjusted constantly, keeping them upright, keeping them moving forward. She realized that human resilience was not just a matter of muscle or technology, it was spirit. After hours of crawling through the storm, they found a shallow cave, offering protection from the wind. Ethan set Myra down, and for the first time they sat in silence together, listening to the storm rage outside. Myra touched his arm, feeling the warmth of the exoskeleton's frame. "You're amazing," she said softly. "I don't think I would survive like this if it were anyone else." Ethan shook his head. "It's not me, it's humans. This is what we do. We endure, we survive. We protect each other." For a brief moment, Myra allowed herself to rest. She thought about her life back at Nova Vesta, about her research and the comforts of civilization. None of it mattered now. What mattered was survival, and witnessing firsthand the strength of a human willing to carry another to safety, no matter the cost. Morning came, and the storm had passed, leaving a layer of fine dust over everything. Ethan lifted Myra once more, and they moved forward. The terrain grew harsher, rocky cliffs rising on either side. Each step became more dangerous, but Ethan's focus never faltered. Midway through the day, they encountered another obstacle, a deep ravine blocking their path. The only way across was a narrow ledge, barely wide enough for the exoskeleton to balance. Ethan paused, calculating the risks. "We can do this," he said to Myra, who nodded weakly, trusting him completely. "Step carefully, hold on tight, and we move as one." Step by step, Ethan advanced along the ledge, careful to adjust the exoskeleton's balance and keep Myra stable. Below them, the ravine opened into a jagged pit, a misstep here meaning certain death. Myra's heart pounded, but she felt safe in his arms. Humans might be fragile in the wrong circumstances, but here, with determination and ingenuity, they were unstoppable. When they finally crossed, Myra breathed a sigh of relief. I can't believe we made it," she whispered. Ethan smiled faintly. "Humans can do more than you think. You just have to believe it." As the day wore on, exhaustion began to weigh on both of them. Ethan's steps slowed slightly, but he pushed onward, knowing that stopping now could mean exposure to the raiders or worse. Myra, though weak, helped by using her arms to brace herself against the exoskeleton when possible. She realized that survival was not just about strength, it was about cooperation, trust, and cleverness. Late in the afternoon, they spotted movement on the horizon. Alien raiders patrolling the dunes, searching for them. Ethan's heart rate increased, but he remained calm. He knew the exoskeleton and his training could help them avoid confrontation. Using the canyon's shadows, he guided Myra along a safer path, hidden from the raiders' scanners. At one point, a drone appeared overhead, its energy sensors glowing menacingly. Ethan reacted instantly, adjusting the exoskeleton's energy shields and using a pulse to disable the drone's sensors temporarily. Myra watched, amazed, as humans adapted to threats in real time, using both technology and clever thinking. "You're incredible," she said again, awe in her voice. "I've never seen anyone survive like this." "I'm not incredible," Ethan said. "Humans are. We endure, we adapt, we fight for each other. That's what matters. That's why we survive." Night fell and they finally reached a small ledge overlooking the desert below. Ethan lowered Myra gently to the ground. "We rest here," he said. "We've made it this far, but tomorrow will be even harder." Myra looked at him, gratitude and admiration shining in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. for not leaving me, for carrying me, for showing me what humans are truly capable of. Ethan placed a hand gently on her shoulder. Humans never leave anyone behind, and when we fight for each other, nothing can stop us. That night under the twin moons of Karin 7, they rested. Myra leaned against Ethan, finally allowing herself to feel safe, trusting completely in the human spirit she had come to understand. Outside, the desert remained unforgiving, but inside their small shelter, human determination burned brightly, stronger than any storm or alien threat. The journey was far from over. The desert stretched endlessly, and dangers still lurked in every shadow. But step by step, human ingenuity and courage carried them forward. And together, Ethan and Myra knew that as long as they refused to give up, no challenge could defeat them. Because humans endure, humans adapt, humans survive. The final morning on Karin 7 arrived with a pale silver light stretching across the desert. Ethan Cale adjusted the exoskeleton one last time, checking the systems for overheating and strain. Myra Solon, still weak but determined, sat in his arms, leaning against him as the desert wind whispered around them. "This is it," Ethan said softly. "The colony is close. We just have to keep moving. Nothing else matters now." Myra nodded. "I trust you," she whispered. "I don't care how hard it gets. I know we'll make it together." Ethan's heart stirred at her words. It was not just human ingenuity or strength that carried them. It was trust, the bond between two people fighting for survival. He adjusted the exoskeleton, ensuring that every servo and hydraulic muscle was ready for the challenges ahead. Their path led them through jagged cliffs and treacherous dunes. The air shimmered with heat, and the rough terrain made every step a struggle. But Ethan's determination never faltered. Step by grueling step, he carried Myra forward. Hours passed, and the desert stretched endlessly before them. They climbed over a ridge, and suddenly in the distance, the glow of the Nova Vesta colony beacon appeared. The sight renewed their spirits. The colony was still far, but it was real. Home was real, and humans never quit. As they moved closer, a sudden hum filled the air, a drone, larger and more menacing than any they had faced before. Its sensors glowed, scanning the desert with deadly precision. Myra gripped Ethan tighter. "They found us," she shouted. Ethan didn't panic. Instead, he activated the exoskeleton's combat mode. Its hydraulic muscles tensed, energy shields powered up, and integrated targeting systems hummed. "Humans adapt," he said calmly. "We survive." The drone fired, energy beams scorching the sand around them. Ethan moved with precise steps, dodging the blasts while maintaining balance under Myra's weight. Each movement was calculated, each adjustment of the exoskeleton critical. Myra felt the incredible strain beneath her, yet Ethan never slowed. His focus, his willpower, and his human determination guided every action. Ethan spotted a narrow crevice in the rocks ahead. He altered course, forcing the drone to fire blindly as they ducked into cover. Sparks flew where the energy blast struck, but the exoskeleton absorbed most of the impact. Myra's eyes widened. How are you still standing?" Ethan smiled faintly, his breath heavy. "Because humans endure," he said. "We fight when we have to, we adapt when we must, and we never leave anyone behind." The drone, frustrated, circled above them before retreating, its sensors temporarily blinded by Ethan's tactical maneuvers. Myra exhaled in relief, and for a moment they paused. But Ethan knew there was no time to rest. The colony was close, and they had to keep moving. The terrain grew more rugged as they approached the final stretch. Sharp rocks and steep inclines tested the exoskeleton's limits. Heat radiated from the desert floor, and every movement sent shockwaves of strain through Ethan's body. Myra, though exhausted, offered what little help she could, pressing against his chest and assisting in balance. Step by step, they climbed the last ridge. Myra could see the colony's lights flickering through the distance. Humans had built that beacon, humans had survived to light it, and humans would continue to endure. At the top of the ridge, a group of raiders appeared, blocking their path. Ethan's pulse quickened, but fear did not touch him. He activated the exoskeleton's energy pulse, emitting a powerful shockwave that forced the raiders to stagger back. With careful, calculated movements, he carried Myra around the obstacles, dodging attacks with human ingenuity and skill. One raider attempted to strike with a melee weapon, but Ethan's exoskeleton enhanced his reflexes. He intercepted the attack, disarming the enemy with precision. Myra watched in awe as humans, aided by technology but guided by sheer willpower, overcame forces much stronger than themselves. Finally, the ridge ended, and before them stretched the Nova Vesta colony. The humans in the colony had seen the distant beacon flare, signaling movement. Alarms rang, and lights flickered as personnel rushed to the outer walls. Ethan quickened his pace, using the last reserves of his strength to carry Myra across the final dunes. Her breathing grew heavier, but so did her hope. Home was close. Humans had fought, humans had endured, and now they would survive. When they reached the colony gates, humans poured out to meet them. Colony engineers rushed forward to help, astonished at the sight of Ethan carrying Myra through the desert with the exoskeleton. Dr. Solan's fellow scientists ran toward her, their faces full of relief and wonder. Myra looked at Ethan, tears streaming down her dust-streaked face. You carried me all this way," she whispered. I don't know how to thank you." Ethan gently lowered her to the ground. "You don't need to thank me," he said. "Humans survive, humans endure, and we take care of each other. That's what makes us strong." The colony commander stepped forward, clapping Ethan on the shoulder. "Lieutenant Kale," he said, his voice full of admiration, "what you've done is incredible, not just with the exoskeleton but with your determination and courage. You've reminded us all what humans are capable of." Myra watched, pride swelling in her chest. "He's right," she said to the gathered colonists. "This isn't just about machines or strength, it's about human spirit. We endure, we adapt, and we never give up." That's what Ethan has shown us. The news of their survival spread quickly through the colony. Engineers marveled at the exoskeleton, but more importantly, everyone celebrated the human perseverance that had carried them through 3 days of unimaginable hardship. Stories would be told, lessons would be learned, and the legend of Ethan Kale's determination would inspire generations to come. That evening, Myra finally allowed herself to rest in her quarters. She reflected on the journey, on the danger and fear, and on the strength of the human spirit. Ethan had carried her through more than just the desert. He had carried her through doubt, fear, and despair. She realized then that humans were extraordinary, not because of weapons or machines, but because of courage, ingenuity, and the unwillingness to abandon one another. Ethan, meanwhile, examined the exoskeleton one last time, ensuring it had not suffered irreparable damage. His body ached, his muscles were sore, but his mind was clear. Humans had faced impossible odds and survived. That was what mattered. That was what defined them. As the twin moons rose over the colony, casting silver light across the settlement, Myra approached Ethan. "You carried me," she said softly, "and you never gave up. I understand now. Humans are amazing. We endure, we survive, and we fight for each other." Ethan smiled, exhaustion in his eyes but pride in his heart. "Yes," he said, "and this is just the beginning. Humans will continue to face challenges, but as long as we endure, adapt, and protect each other, we will always survive." The colony celebrated that night, not just for the return of Dr. Solan, but for the triumph of the human spirit. Stories of courage, ingenuity, and determination would ripple through the settlement, reminding everyone that humans, no matter how small or fragile they might seem, were capable of incredible feats. Ethan's journey through the desert, carrying Myra in his arms with nothing but determination and the exoskeleton, became a legend. Children would hear the story and dream of the day they too could face the impossible. Scientists would marvel at the ingenuity and technology, but more importantly, they would marvel at the willpower that guided it. And Myra, now safe and healed, would forever remember the lesson she had learned on Karin 7, that humans, when they refuse to give up, can overcome even the deadliest threats, that humans endure, humans survive, humans triumph. Because in the end, it was not just the machines that had carried them. It was the human heart, the human spirit, and the unbreakable determination to protect one another that made survival possible. The desert of Karin 7 remained harsh and unforgiving, but inside Nova Vesta Colony, hope burned brighter than ever. And as Ethan stood beneath the twin moons, his exoskeleton powered down, Myra by his side, he knew that humanity's story was far from over. They would continue to endure, to innovate, and to triumph, against all odds.